tonight's presenter is a regular one for us. I think once a year we get Rod in, and they're always fascinating presentations. And I suspect that tonight's is not going to be an exception at all. I know personally I'm looking forward to it. Rod will be speaking about narrow gauge railways in China, and it's a fascinating part of the world for me. Never been there actually. Got close, but didn't quite get there. But anyway, it is an amazing place from what I've read and what I see. So, Rod, I'll pass over to you to start your presentation, and you need to take yourself off mute, obviously.
I've done that. Now I'm just looking for the green button to share the screen, and it's not showing.
Just hang on. We'll work out what's going on.
Ah, that's because it's in an unusual place.
Was it there
Right.
somewhere?
Um, Good. And we practiced this the other night.
Yeah, and you
Here
you
we
got
go.
you got 100%. So let's hope the pressure hasn't got the better of you.
There I are. I'm
Ah,
sharing, and you should have the opening frame.
and we do. Thank you for that, Rod.
Right, so we're ready to roll on.
We are.
I'll leave you digesting that steam loco. There were over 800 of those built 762 millimetre gauge. If the average railway has 10 of those locos, there have to be 90 railways in China to use them. Now, I'm putting in some contacts. Right now, that's the arrow. And it's not advancing on the arrow. It did the other night. Ah, there we go. Right, China, world's third largest nation, broken up into, I think they're called provinces. And tonight we'll be looking at Sichuan, which is regarded as Western China, and a brief mention of Yunnan because that's how Sichuan got connected to the rest of the world. Sichuan itself is not quite double the size of my state of Victoria, but that's because I think it doesn't include the autonomous city of Chongqing. Add the two up and it probably is double the size of Victoria. So in 1983, at the start of the year, China announced that it would allow independent travel. Up to then, groups could go, and our ARE did get there and walked across the bridge from Hong Kong into China. So I went in 83, having been to many continents, but not the lot. And that was a view in 1983 of a mining railway that we passed on our way from Guangzhou to Beijing. I'm not sure which gauge that one is. I've never been able to track it. The loco looks to be 762, but the wagons look to be standard gauge. So now I've been back to China several times, including on a trip with line siding, John Raby's line siding, to visit the declining standard gauge steam in mines. Then following that, up came the first of two Sichuan narrow gauge tours, and this compilation comes from the two of them. So the two big cities are Chongqing, which is 30 million roughly, and 270 kilometres away, Chengdu with 20 million, and the two about 270 kilometres apart. Think of it as Melbourne to Albury. And here is the logical sequence merged from two holidays. The A and the B were standard gauge. I put in only a token slide each. Then racked around, you'll see us in an anti-clockwise arc is where we're going. And then I will finish with the largest and best known, which is equal to what the others put together, and that's the Shibangsha number 9. So there are direct flights from Australia to Chengdu because those number of people, they come to Australia as tourists. Well, we can go there. So, just getting underway, the first of two standard gauge routes to the north of Chengdu. The declining industrial steam was by and large used just for shunting from an industrial site to an interchange with China Rail. That's an SY. And at Hanwon, a similar operation. And then we move into the first of the ones that got away. This one, Pengzhou, had closed before my first visit to the region. And Bert provided these maps. Yes, they are certainly copyright to Farrail, but I've travelled with Farrail and Bert made these available for tonight. So there's a plinth C2. And its builder's plate, which you can't read. And I'm breaking up, each time I shift to a new location, I'm breaking it with shots of Chinese culture, mainly food. Those three-wheel vehicles are ubiquitous in China for everything. And there they are as food vendors. Rongshan became cult for several reasons. It kept steam long after many others had lost steam. Major hauler, but visits to the area were banned. It took a while for the news to filter into the hobby. And there was a brief window in time when you could go there when it was working, and Farrail did. So with John, we arrived, I think 4 years after it had closed. But it was just as if they'd walked out the night before. Everything was sitting there. Trains for the workers and locals. A lot of the narrow gauge railways were used for local travel, not just for supporting their industry. And there's the station buffet still trading. I don't know who's buying what. Looks as if it's like a 7-Eleven in Australia. You get your minor kitchen items from the station buffet inside the loco shed. And some of our exploration, that very rickety bridge was nerve-wracking, but it was the only way we could access the upper terminus. I clung onto that handrail in case the rotting boards gave way. And some of the scenery. The yellow is, of course, canola, a crop that we have in abundance in Australia. Very scenic, very photogenic. There we are, looking at some of the dismantled remains. Sichuan, by and large, in times I've been there, misty, and Chongqing is known for its mist fog days and rain because it's well up into the foothills of the Himalayas. So, classic dinner, enjoying. With a group like John's, we invariably have 10 people and 12 dishes. So now we move to one of the major operators, the Yongquan Coal Railway. I remember it as Honglu. This is at the interchange with China Rail. The coal will go from these mines sometimes to a power station on the railway, but often shipped to a power station somewhere else, either by rail or by river barge. 762 millimetres electric. This is one of the majors. In fact, I went there with both of John's trips. I was there in 2012 and again in 2019, part because it was busy, part because it was easy to reach. And So that's the main loader or washery at the upper end. We had variable security. We went with groups. We went with a Chinese-speaking guide. I don't know how well you'd go solo within the depots, but there's lots of access away from the depots. Some depots were friendly. Some depots, the security kicked us out very fast. So, but I wouldn't want to hire a car in China and drive myself. You really have to think of either getting a local bus and just being a pedestrian or hiring a guide and taxi. Prices in China are very reasonable. So here was a favourite haunt. The the line comes effectively up the footpath of this village town, back out into scenic country. Not sure of the voltage. I didn't do that research. I think it's something like 1200, I think, or 1000. It's and that one there was our. You can see why we picked that restaurant. The surroundings were fairly typical. Market gardens, small holdings. This is one where we sat while the actual owner of the land was hoeing weeds away just behind us. What's a That's a loader. Oh, and typical worker accommodation, those big blocks of flats. It's the way you can fit mega millions of people into a country without over occupying. There's still a lot of green space in China. Hand shunting the brake van. Don't know. Trains, I think, didn't run with brake vans normally. That may be only for crew transport. And at the top end, typical of the electric lines that come out of the mine adits and go to the loader to serve the mainline trains. I don't take many happy snaps or selfies, but there was one. So we'll move around from Honglu now. Mojiang is another major, based on its river town on the bottom right, where there's a loader to the water. Then through a tunnel to a junction, two different major valleys to mines, and each of them has public passenger service. Our guide was a bit nervous. He'd had an unfortunate run-in with security on an earlier visit, so we were left to fend for ourselves for some of the time, but we didn't have any run-in. Overall, the Chinese people are immensely friendly, helpful, and hospitable. Security, though, didn't always match the general population. So this is its own characteristic, notably locos in camouflage paint. And there's a public passenger train. Ticketed, we bought tickets. That's at the junction. Coming out of the tunnel from the terminus to the junction. Works train. Not sure whether that's firewood or pit props. It looks like restaurant supplies on the leading one. But that's the depot at the terminus. This day was actually raining, not just misty, but it was in patches, it wasn't continuous. You'll recognise some of the style now that runs across. They're generally all under different managements, different procurement policies for their equipment, but there's some level of commonality, a bit like Queensland sugar cane. One of the terminuses. Skips are under that shelter. They've come out of the ADIT and they're going up to a loader onto the main line. Public passenger train at the platform. Lincoln Pin. It does look as if they're unbraked. The tunnel at least has worked under colour light signalling from boxes. So our lunch break, classic, but we often ate be either steam buns or I think we had breakfast of steam buns often, though I think the cane basket is for steam buns, not for rice. So back to the map. We've come around past AB, 1, 2, 3 and 4. We're now coming across to Yongron and up towards the east through the major city of Chongqing. So classic mining, low height, electric locos capable of going into small scale mines. This is one where security did evict us. We got a few hasty photos. It makes it look as if we had a lengthy visit, but we didn't. The height looks low, but it was quite safe walking on the tracks. There was still enough clearance to the overhead. Not one of us got fried. Now, I'm not sure what they're scavenging. There are places where steam locos work where they rake through the dropped ashes to look for little unburnt bits. Now here, everything in that wagon is coal, so they must be looking for smaller bits which they reckon aren't useful for industrial application, but which are useful for domestic fires. We've seen full scale in other countries, gypsies attacking trains in Bosnia to scavenge as much coal as they can grab. And this is one of those that has a standard gauge loco for shunting from their complex out to China Rail. Wasn't in steam on this occasion. And bit by bit, even these industrial steam shunters have vanished. Tipler. And back out the tunnels, back out in public territory. So we staked out. We had an hour lunch break staking out without a train moving through. Interesting speed restriction. I can think meters per second. I did study physics and taught it, but an unusual one for instruction to a loco crew. So again, restaurant break from here to the next. Now this one was really quirky and highly accessible. It's in the northern fringe of the city of Chongqing. It was only just tonight I discovered this is not on the Yangtze, it's on the Jialing River, which joins the Yangtze within the city boundaries. So there's those funny locos that look like something off the far tottering in Oyster Creek. So the left map gives you a location, and you can see that's the Jialing coming down to join the Yangtze there in the heart of the city. The northern of the two airports is there. And here's the actual railway line itself. And there's an incline or a loading chute that goes down to river level to take the coal away. Most of the mining is subsiding gradually, but China was still building power stations 10 years ago. While we were plumping for zero carbon or whatever, China was burning sufficient that Australia could go to zero and the quantity wouldn't be noticed in the world atmosphere. So we got a brief look in the afternoon of arrival and a more extended visit next day. So we got to cover this line fairly well in its varying moods. I guess drums of fuel going to run machinery at the top end. That's it. It looks to be some sort of track maintenance vehicle, possibly spraying weed killer or dropping weed killer. That's the coal offloader on the left with the incline down to river level. And here he is emptying coal bins. Market gardens working right up on the railway reservation. If everybody eats half a cabbage a day, what do 15 million cabbages per day look like? Again, scouring bits of dropped coal. I used to do that with fallen briquettes at Nanagoon in the early 1950s. My grandfather was the station master, and we certainly collected the briquettes that fell out of the wagons, went into the hearth of the station master's house. Another one with a bit of street running and restaurants. we haven't kept up to date with the news since 2019. John has tempted or suggested if there's enough interest, we should be going back and see what survives. And remember, it's not just Sichuan. There's a lot more further east that we've visited. I just narrowed the field to this to be manageable. All right, we're now at the upper terminus. I do try and put things into geographical sequence. So this is where the trains are loaded from the actual mining skips. And we're about to move up to the offload up there, the brick. Two of the they look home built. Well, local engineering works may be. They were unique. We've never seen locos like this on any of the other lines we visited. Work at transport. Ah, now that's sand, but for what purpose? Possibly for sandboxes in the locos to assist with braking. And now the offloader, which was fascinating watching. The whole train goes around, but to facilitate the offloading, it runs through on skids through the actual offloader. And it's done as a balloon loop, and the loco goes through as well, but the pantograph is down. There's no overhead across the offloader. It may be grabbed by a cable to work it through. So back down at the main base, just a better look to show the loader relative to the river. And I'll pause here for some culture. That is the river just below the loader, looking like a local ferry. But Chongqing is the upper level of the commercial cruises that the international tourists go on. I had done one of these on an earlier holiday, tacked it on at the tail end. So you can not only fly into the region, you can go there by cruise ferry. Chongqing is famous for having its metro as a monorail, the largest monorail network in the world. Relatively fast, I think 65 kilometres per hour. And some of it's elevated, some of it's in tunnel. One line goes under the river. And its main railway station. So now we shift around. We're going further north. And now this is a whole area, several mines. I haven't got them all named. This is the main Baishui. If you look at John Raby's background photo for tonight, I think that's Baishui. He's nodding. In fact, there's John taking the photo. We actually walked some of this. The whole philosophy of a line sighting tour was to get trackside shots of real steam when it was working, and that's had to move concept into general industrial. And with these ones, most of them we couldn't ride, even if we wanted to. We were certainly walking to vantage points. That may be for loading ballast rather than loading coal. Suppose we have lots of equivalents of this in Australia, but generally underground and not visible. Port Kembla area did, Wonthaggi did. That's our lunchery. There's no railway in that. That's just culture. Right, I did get the name for this one thanks to John's daily blog, Tangier He. From memory, this one was reasonably frequent. We could sit around and wait and get a few trains. Work at transport. Some of the mines are in places inaccessible for transport, certainly for motor cars, but most workers would be on motorcycles or push bikes, as is true in a lot of Asia. Lunch break. So slightly, much the same region, but several kilometres distant, another pocket of mines. I'm not sure what that was dredging or why. I don't think that that was a navigable waterway, so it's not for navigation. It may be for sand for building construction. Ooh. I'm used to steamboat in Japan and China, but some of the Brits on a recent trip was quite surprised with steamboat cooking. You collect all the raw ingredients and then you dip them in the bubbling cauldron in the middle of the table. And after you're finished eating everything, the bubbling cauldron is now soup, and you have the soup last. Right, back to the map. We've come that whole sweep from when we've just been at 7-8. I'm now switching to the famous Yancoal Railway at Shibangshui, which is the one still operating as the Puffing Billy for China. The coal mining has stopped, but it runs for tourism. It was steadily going that way in our time, and it's gone that way. And about 150 kilometres from Chengdu proper. That's no worse than the sort of drive we do in Australia to visit tourist railways. And so, with a feeder of 50 million people in the two nearby cities, it's assured of patronage. So pause for a minute while you digest the text. I won't read it aloud. The logo on the loco is related to the whole line coming under the umbrella of national parks for tourism. So now, some context for its location. The little bit of red there is the actual line, and the black is the railway line today. The actual upper mines had no road access. The red is now road access to Bagu, which is the town where we stayed. We had a whole week here doing different mix and match, do your own thing, walking the line, riding trains, going to vantage points. I reckon that the red, which is now the road, was the original handwork pushcart line serving the original mines down to a river interchange here. It's about 25 kilometres long, I think. I may have the figure somewhere. The main power station and river change now is at the bottom end. The first portion is electrified, serving a big open cast mine, now closed. We'll see all of that. And then the top end was pit mining with skipways bringing the coal into a loader. Scenic area, hilly, moist climate. Again, the yellow, it's not wildflowers, it's canola, seasonal. So there's the route in detail. You probably won't memorize the names, but from the lower terminus at, if I can ever pronounce it, Shishi, the X is pronounced SH. Then up past to Yujin, which is the main tourist loading point, and where our hotel was. Then to Mifen, then the electrification stops there. Steam, it was steam only into the current era. That's why everybody went there. Mifenyang is a reversing station. Then it keeps climbing up through assorted tunnels, and the railway track is very much the village access. You walk beside it, you ride motorcycles beside it, you're actually on the tracks through the tunnels, but all the tunnels have warning because there's quite a frequent train service, and you have flashing red lights to tell you when not to go through the tunnel. Bagu is a mining town, a bit like Walhalla but larger, and then the continuation goes to the mines proper. So this was our first glimpse. We were anxious to see something, so we went out and took a nighttime grab shot just to say, we're here. And that gives you some idea of the timetable. That's uphill and downhill trains in the one timetable, but there's more trains than that. That's by and large the public ones, which run with ordinary rolling stock. People will ride it with market vegetable things going to market, supermarket supplies coming home, poultry, pigs, and overlaying that there are extra tourist trains, some of which may be charter, which is why they don't appear. So this was our first morning having breakfast in the town square with coal trains passing. Classic Chinese cafe restaurant on kitchen on the left. So this is the bottom terminus, which serves a powerhouse. So this is the depot, the offloader, powerhouse, normal public carriage, bits of everything. I don't know whether we'd pre-arranged a visit or whether our guide just chatted to the gatekeeper as we arrived on the day. Not sure whether that wood is firewood or pit props. That was done up for a purpose, but I can't recall what the purpose was. Super atmospheric, authentic steam and authentic environment. Now, I can remember when Queensland was like this, but this outlasted Queensland by 50 years. Now, this is a public train preparing to depart, and those timbers, I think, are construction timbers. They're in the process of building a large new tourist-style station at Bargoo, station building, a bit like Puffing Billy building Belgrave or the new tourist centre at Lakeside. It's to cater for that sort of market. So we walked this lower section, being careful to be clear of trains as we walked through the tunnel. Keep calling them cabbages. It's some sort of vegetable, but that is the tunnel, but that's light at the end of the tunnel. That's not a train coming, I think. That's the main coal loader. Was it Jiang? This steam train is arriving from the top end of the line, and this is where the electric starts. The steam locos keep hauling their coal through. The electrics are just for the shuttles from here. Now, the brown carriages are the tourist carriages. Something on YouTube says that they're air conditioned. I don't think that they are. There may be air conditioned ones 10 years down the track. So it's a regular public train getting underway. These are locals carrying baskets of purchases home. They're not arriving with produce to sell. Spot the railway enthusiast. sipping coffee at the table. So up to Mifengyang, which is a reversing station, small village, and a lot of railway enthusiasts found accommodation there in a hostel run by the doctor above his surgery, I think, the dentist or a shopkeeper, and that way they'd base themselves here and get shots of the whole line in action. So it's a reversing station, and also you'll notice they're cleaning the fire, and the scavenger in the white hat is waiting for the train to go and will scour through the hot ashes. And the pipes, I think, are part of the new station at Bagu. It's construction materials coming in. Running round, of course. But you can see it morphing steadily into a puffing billy with tourists in the tourist carriage. Nearly all locals. We were the only internationals. But their mobile phone cameras. And now that's the station lady setting a signal. I'm not sure how interlocked it was, what formalities she needed. It's a busy line. I think it was running under token working, and I never got to photograph a token. Now, those diesels were brought in and were either not successful or not the right gauge, never used. That's an interesting bit of... That's a track creep device that lets the track work its way downhill, and it adjusts automatically, and that's the ashes between the rails and the scavengers at work. And the station lady setting a signal, and in the distance you'll see a motorbike running on the track beside the tracks. Just so typical of the way of life then. And typical of the housing. Mud brick. It tends to be a fairly dull colour and a small size of brick. Some of it's rendered, some of it isn't. So it's an empty getting underway. So up to Kaiserbach. And again, local transport running beside the rails. Seem to be positioning as an empty rather than a tourist train as such. Building materials. And a nice restaurant on the terrace. I think I had morning tea there or lunch. This was at a popular stopover point for the tourists to take photos of the train in action in front of the hills. Right, that's the sort of loading you get on the regular trains. The pigs travel in the same carriage, just the gates get swung shut when the pigs are in half the carriage, and the other half has the locals with their baskets of produce, and with here baskets of genuine hens, and I think the right hand one is day-old chickens. Going uphill. So that's the popular tourist haunt. So that's the toilet block for the people who've climbed out of the train in order to picnic on the slopes above the station. And that's the view they're getting, and the safety fence to stop them slipping down the slope. That's genuinely a tourist train, nothing but tourist carriages. It's working the way uphill. Some of this I did from foot, some of it I did by riding to stations. An old loader. There was also a footpath up and over that the hill. You could walk through the tunnel, you could do the footpath. Because the tunnels were long and from memory not less. You really had to be just gamble that there was nothing treacherous underfoot. So that's the red is the warning light for the pedestrians and the motorcyclists. So it was taken from one end of a short tunnel of it. So now Bagu, had rather morphed into a retirement village. The streets, so I said, this is what I pictured Walhalla could have been like. And probably was close enough to it, except it wasn't brick. Walhalla was wooden huts, terraced up the slope. It's the municipal square. Typical streets, pedestrian, motorcycle, and I think you could get a trishaw up most of them, but motor vehicles as such couldn't even reach the town for years. Could now, but they had a car park on the town fringe. And then you came in on foot. So, Bagu Station. Now this is the back of the municipal baths. The coal for to heat the municipal baths comes down by train, gets tipped straight into that bunker under the bathhouse. Ran out of time. For once, after years of travel, I was brave enough to go to a municipal bathhouse and strip off and bathe in it, and I never got the time to do it. All that construction junk is in association with the new station building. So, trackside going above Bagu. Oh, that's the tourist vehicle, that one. Brings people up by road. Fake antique. I skipped dinner one night to go out cab riding, and the group was eating dog, fricassee of dog. So one of the group brought me back a portion in a takeaway, but eating it cold, it had gone tough. Classic worker housing. I never got inside one. I don't know how nicely appointed. Videos, television, probably be quite comfortable. So heading up the valley, narrowing to the far end. So we reach the top, name of which has just escaped me top of head, having memorised everything else. So that's the loader. Looking down from where the skip tramways come out of the mines and go to the loader. Hand pushed. I think that's 500mm gauge, that particular one. Typical of many back in the days. So I'm guessing pit props rather than firewood, but possibly firewood running machinery. Worker transport for the mine, now preserved at the entry to a mining museum. So as I said, on the last night, I skipped dinner and went out cab riding. Always gloat worthy. And so that was pretty well the farewell to this line and the whole lot. A friendly crew. Next day, back by train to where we started. Refreshment kiosk in action. Back by bus to Chengdu, which has a forestry park, I think it's called, which acts as a small museum. So here's a little bit of history in the gap before we left for the airport. That was when the railway came from Chongqing to Chengdu, 1952. China left its railway construction relatively late in the piece worldwide, and while it has a lot of track, it was built very much on sound economic lines. None of these proliferation of branches like Europe and Australia, and partly strategic and partly for national development. So now, a slight aside, I mentioned earlier the province to the south is Yunnan, and it got the first railway in the far west of China, built by French as a colonial railway. The Yunnan Railway was meter gauge, came through from Vietnam, crossed the border, and came up to Kunming. And this is the through international train from Hanoi to Kunming. This is the first division, the equivalent of Southern Aurora. Nothing but sleeping cars plus a diner, and it was worked solo by a cascaded former Queensland Railway DH, and I knew that our Queensland member would be watching tonight, and was a second division. The sitting cars also worked through by a single DH. And Kunming, the end of that line, has a railway museum with one of these preserved. That's not the Chinese one, that's in Madagascar, but there are only 5 of these have survived in the world. Three are on Madagascar. One was repatriated from Madagascar to a tourist railway in France, and the other one's in the museum at Kunming, and I'll visit it when I go back one day. And eventually Kunming got connected to the standard gauge network in the early 70s when they built the Kunming to Chengdu Railway, quite famous, very heavy engineering, to open up the region and for military strategic purposes. And it's been so successful, it's not only been duplicated in part, a lot of it has been relocated and trains are now faster. I did ride that in 1993, 2001, but unfortunately I went through all of this in darkness. So, to finish off, all good things come to an end, and our holiday did. That's not a direct flight to Australia, but this is Chengdu Airport, which does have direct flights to Australia. So anybody tempted to go can follow all of that up. The names of the railways I mentioned in the handout, the preamble for booking tonight. It's worth looking them up on YouTube. 2 of them have lots of YouTube videos available. The others have some. And so there we have reached the end of Sichuan. I will stop the share or open it for questions. I'll leave the share going for questions for the moment. If you want me to go back to a map or anything.
Very much. Thanks very much, Rod. I'm just trying to sort myself out here at the moment. Just bear with me. Look, that was fascinating. I've always been intrigued by China, and because I work at Puffing Billy, I see hundreds of Chinese every week, and I share your statement about how friendly they are. They're great people. Really enjoy them. But does anyone have any questions for Rod? And that was, as I said, a wonderful presentation. Any questions or comments? Just press the space bar to speak. Well, I've got one question for you, Rod. And it's not strictly railway, but I noticed with the signage in China, there's a lot of English. Is that common throughout the country?
I don't think so. By and large, I'm not in tourist areas.
Yeah, but
it certainly was English there in on the railway that we've just covered because it's touristy.
Yeah.
By and large, I don't get much English in China at all.
Okay, right. Okay.
I can read a few Chinese characters.
Yeah.
Just a few, not enough to order off a menu.
Yeah. And food-wise, that was all good food? I mean, you had no issues with that?
Never in China. Sichuan is famous. John's careful. It's supposed to be the fieriest cuisine in China and competes for fieriest in the world.
Okay.
John's always very careful with our groups to order to match the group. And often the fieriness is not inbuilt. It's sliced chili coming as part of the salad, or sliced chili that you can scrape out of the dish.
Yeah.
So even the smallest village could roll out excellent food and variety.
It's wonderful. Yeah. Anyone want to make any comment at all?
Those who've been there, John or Graham, or
I think John might have departed.
Oh, right.
Lunch was calling, his note says.
Right. I haven't looked at the comments myself.
Yeah.
I just put something in the Oh, sorry, Mike. I just put something in the chat room. It didn't uh, mention my name, but I think what I've seen to this morning to us, Rod, is an absolutely fascinating look at Chinese narrow gauge industrial railways in the raw. It's a really good insight into what the scene actually was like. Not prettified locomotives all shining up and looking their very best, but a look at a working railway as it really is. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you. I'm
Yep.
putting some more stuff in the chat room at the moment, but in the meantime, I'll return you to the studio. But thanks for that.
Yep.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else want to make a statement or ask a question? Congratulate Rod on a wonderful
Rod,
presentation, which it was.
Jeff Maynard here. I've been there
Jeff.
a few times over the last 30 years, and I found their mainline railway system just amazing. It's the best way to travel anywhere in the world. I think the Chinese seem to be way ahead of anyone else, and they can build stuff at a great rate too. So I was most impressed tonight to see your presentation on the narrow gauge stuff. Thank you.
Yep. Yes, I've deliberately avoided mainline China, which was the first to rise to fame with international visitors because it still had mainline steam. They were still building mainline steam into the 70s. And that was because it took a while for the knowledge of the industrial systems to be discovered and percolate. But yeah, very comfortable riding on Chinese trains. I've done it a lot, but not for an LRRSA presentation.
Mhm. And is there any steam left on mainline there at all?
No, vanished. And a lot of the industrial that we went to see 10 years ago is gone.
Yeah.
When it left the main line, there was still lots of coal mining that used standard gauge steam, heavy duty. They were cult, they were famous. Everybody went there, and I have, including with John. But they're bit by bit going or gone. I think the last one of those is gone. The steelworks at Betai Steelworks, I think the steam is gone. Some of the coal mines have still got standard gauge rail operations, but they're electric now, not steam.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, look. Thanks, Rod. If no one else has any questions or comments to make, I just want to thank you once again. You come out every year and give us a wonderful presentation, and we really appreciate it. And I note that in 12 months' time, if you recall, you've committed yourself in writing in blood to give us another one, and it'll be more China, which I think will be fascinating. So thanks for what you did tonight, Rod. It was really, really interesting.
Revived a lot of memories for me, and you never really learn any topic until you're trying to teach it to somebody else. I had to do a lot of homework on names and maps as preparing tonight.
It's a bit like writing a book. You don't really know your topic until you've actually written it. You think you know it before you start, but you learn so much in the process. Yeah, so look, that's great. Look, next month we have something entirely, or next 2 months, something entirely different. It'll be Richard Sherman, and he'll be presenting on his little light railway he built. He calls it Wombat Creek, but it was to do with the construction work at his home. So it's about as big a contrast as you can get to narrow gauge in China. But it should be very interesting, and as I say, it's something very, very different from what we normally have. So thanks everyone for coming tonight, and once again, thanks to Rod. Really appreciate your attendance, and as I said at the start too, we'd love those of you who aren't members to join up. It'd be great. Anyway, good night, everybody, and thanks for coming.
Good afternoon from London. Thank you very much indeed for a very enjoyable session. Thank you. Really enjoyed it. I've put something in the chat room about the next LCGB Zoom meeting, and I'll be in touch again further.
And we do have an international audience here tonight. I noticed Gunter was there before. Great to see you, Gunter. And there were others, I think, from the UK as well, which was good to see.
well, before we leave, Mike,
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure if it'll be in time for your next meeting from Down Under, but the June meeting, June the 4th, I think it is, from LCGB, will be Jeff Plum. Now, Jeff Plum, I'm horrified to think is a year younger than me. He was an ITV cameraman. He was encouraged into photography at a very youthful age, and he does a series of excellent presentations on that was the year that was, mimicking that famous 1963 BBC satirical programme of various years. So, you name it, that was the year that was 1966, and it's absolutely fascinating.
Right.
His next meeting for us would be that was the year that was 1962, when he was barely a teenager. I can guarantee the quality. You've seen a very good presentation in the past from Gunter. Gunter is another excellent photographer.
He is, definitely.
Jeff is in the same vein.
Right.
So that I appreciate that in our summer and your winter, the time difference means it'll be some ungodly hour of the morning, like 04:30. I appreciate that. I
didn't know such a
work on
time existed.
Well, exactly.
Won't get
Yeah,
me
I
there.
couldn't agree more. But I would say that if it's possible for anyone to tune into that, they would be well rewarded. I am working in my capacity as chairman of MSC, Member Services Committee. I will try and work on getting a more Australia-friendly time. And if it's late morning here, it's evening for you.
Yeah.
It can be done. I'll work on it, but I can't make any promises at the moment.
You
But
can
I can
record it,
guarantee-
of course.
That's right.
If you've got a
Yeah,
website, you can record and place later.
Right. Okay. Anyway, thanks again, Mike. I appreciate the invitation to attend your meetings again, and thank you, Rod, for a very educational meeting. And I wish you all, well, in this case, it's coming up for 12:20 at lunchtime. Thank you very much, and good afternoon and good evening to you all. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bob. And also, too, I must apologise. I haven't got the recording of Gunter's meeting presentation up on the website yet. Just got a little bit slack. Actually, pretty busy, but still a bit slack. It's a big job. But anyway, I'll promise it'll be up there in the next week or so, and hopefully Rod's will be there as well. So beyond that, good evening, good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be, and hopefully see you in a couple of months' time. Bye, everyone.
Good night, Australia and all the rest of the world.
Good on you, Gunter.
Auf Wiedersehen.
All the best.
Auf
Auf
Wiedersehen.
Wiedersehen.
Yeah.
Tschüss.
Actually, I've been at Puffing Belly. I've been throwing out Velkommen
Yeah.
for German visitors. I think I've nailed it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's okay. Willkommen is good.
And Danke, that's it. Beyond that, it's I don't know, Schnitzel. Or
You can learn some more. Şerife in Turkish or what?
No.
All the best. Bye bye.
All the best. Thanks, Gunter. Bye, everyone. Night. Here we go. I'm closing everybody off.